people are expecting. People are expecting quite a bit.
This is your time.
You want to win. You're going to be like this.
There are no shortcuts in life.
You'll get better because you make each other better.
The inches we need are everywhere around us.
I know plenty of people that are capable. I know fewer people that are willing.
You have to believe it to do it.
Now, what are you going to do?
Welcome in, everyone. You are listening to Sideline Sessions here on the B Podcast Network. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We're going to have a great conversation here around basketball, around playing overseas, around playing at a variety of different levels, the things that make a difference, both good and bad, right? And also a lot of insights from a variety of athletes from some shows that my guest here hosts himself. My guest is Travis Reed. As a professional basketball player, he played 10 years overseas in Colombia, Poland, France, Belgium, Holland, Estonia, Germany, Australia, and more. He was a league MVP in Holland in 2004. He was the finals MVP, a league MVP in Estonia, and also the Baltic League MVP in 2006. He hosts a podcast called Travis Reed, A Basketball Life, as well as a YouTube show called An Athlete's Journey. On that podcast, that's targeted for athletes who are thinking about or about to embark on a journey overseas. That's something we're going to talk about here. And on his YouTube show, talks to a variety of athletes from a bunch of different sports. They share their journeys, lessons, some of the things that they've learned along the way, also some things that'll relate to our conversations here. So we should have a lot of great perspectives for all those things that are important to know and think about when we're working with athletes at the various levels that we work at. So Travis, thanks for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your athlete's journey. I gave a little bit of that, right? That was just, it was a lot, but it was just a slice. Tell our listeners about the different levels you played at, places you play, and kind of how that progressed for you, right? And as you moved up the levels and kind of determined where you wanted to take your career next. Talk us through that a bit.
All right. Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning. Growing up, my father was my coach, like most kids. He was my coach all the way up to about when I was 12 years old, something like that, 11 years old. And then, about 11, 12 years old. And pretty much after that, he saw my skills grow and grow to where, like, park leagues wasn't challenging me enough. My dad always was looking for the next challenge for me. Because I was always a kid that when I was 8, I was playing against 11 and 12-year-olds. When I was 9, I was going against 13 and 14-year-olds. Because I was pretty big for my age, so he wanted me to be able to go up against older kids so I wouldn't dominate. I would take a lot of lumps, and that's pretty much what I did. And like I said, I got better till I was about 12, and then I went to AAU basketball, which was played with a team called with 2 NBA players on it, Jason and Jaren Collins. So in my class, it was a bunch of NBA guys, Baron Davis, Jason and Jaren Collins, Jeff Trapang, not to even mention, obviously, Shea Cotton, just a lot of great big-name players, all in that 97 class. After AAU, went to Crenshaw High School, won the state championship as a freshman and the city championship as a freshman. Then I switched schools. I ended up going to, my mom and pop's divorced, and so I ended up going to a school called A.B. Miller in Fontana. Back then it was called Fontucky because nobody knew where it was at. But I went there with my cousin and Brandon Taylor, and became one of the best players in the country. I was, Inland Empire Player of the Year, all these other Player of the Years. Was top 40 players in the country. Went to UCLA, was part of the #1 recruiting class in the country with Earl Watson, Baron Davis, Billy Knight, Shea Cotton, Rico Hines, Ty Ramazar. Went to UCLA for 2 years. Me and the coach didn't see eye to eye on my playing time, so I left and went to Long Beach State. I played at Long Beach State. I was first team All Big West 2 years in a row. And then after that, I had a decision to make. I was going to get drafted like number 58. To Memphis Grizzlies at the time. But they had like 4 guys in my position. And I was like, do I want to, go do the G League and all that? And like my friend from Long Beach State, Rock Lloyd, had basically just told me like, don't go to G League, dog. You're gonna be in Willacoochee, Georgia, in an apartment with 5 dudes in it, in 2 bedroom. And I was like, nothing against Willacoochee, so don't be mad. But you know, I was just like, man, I want to go make more money than this. So I dealt with his agent. His agent was like, I can go get you, $5,000 a month right now. So you don't have to worry about, anything. You're gonna get money right now. So that's pretty much how my overseas journey kind of started. I was gonna come back, possibly playing the summer league, but they just wasn't paying, enough money for me to keep my place. So I literally graduated from college, and then maybe like 3 weeks later, I went to Bogota, Colombia, which was my first place I played overseas. Now that, like I'll just go over the places, if you want me to go into each place, let me know. But Bogota was the first place. It was insane. I had 2 armed guards with me at all times because they do some crazy stuff in Bogota. There was no police, so the military was the police. So like I said, everywhere I went, I had the 2 guys with like AK-47s and M16s on their backs. So whenever I walked around, me and the other Americans, we all had bodyguards. So that was crazy. After Bogota, I signed a contract to go to, and like I said, my first year was my craziest year because I went to like 4 or 5 different countries before I got stuck. And so I could tell any player, if you're trying to play overseas, like, don't give up, because like they cut you like it ain't nothing. I went to Poland for a couple weeks and they cut me because I wasn't 6'10". They were just like, well, he's doing, I'm 6'8" and I'm killing. They was like, no, we wanted a 6'10" guy, so they cut me and the other American. And then I went to France and the coach got fired in the preseason. So the new coach came in and released me. Then I went to Belgium and I thought for sure I was gonna make that team. And they cut me too. And so after that, I fired my agent, the agent that I had, and I went to Holland for basically no money my first year for $1,500 a month. After Holland, I had a really good year, won statistical player of the year that year, my first year. Then obviously stayed in Holland for 4 years, won the championship my second year, won MVP my second year. And that was probably like, if you want to say my overall best year overseas, because I won MVP of the league, I won MVP of the All-Star game. Obviously we won the championship. And then that summer, I came back and played in the Summer Pro League, and my team won the championship. So 2004 was just a great year. So like I said, I played in Holland for 3 years, then went to Estonia, played over there, won MVP of the league, a couple years. And after Estonia, I got injured and I missed a year because I had stress fractures in both my shins. And I have still plates in them to this day. After Estonia, I went to Romania and I hated it there. So I got my agent to get me out of there after a couple months. Went back to Estonia, finished the season, and then I ended up going to Australia for a year. Then I went to Germany and back to Australia. And after that, I wanted to keep playing, but my son was getting older. He turned 3 at the time, and I started really missing him towards the end of my career. So I just kind of hung it up after those 10 years.
Yeah, a lot of those things are changing fast, I think. I mean, even the college part of it, right? With NIL now, and some changes that were made to what is now the G League, right? With compensation, that there's all these. I mean, even the calculus, I guess, for athletes who are looking at going and playing in college, and then maybe what they might want to do after college. There's a lot of different things to take into account, and it makes it just as important to continue to surround yourself with the right people, get the right advice, right, and make smart decisions. And because it seems like some of those hard decisions they're coming up earlier and earlier. There is that push and pull between maybe instant gratification or what seems like the fastest option, and what might be the best long-term option, I would think, whether it's the ease of mobility and making decisions based on going to the place where there's the quickest path to playing time, or where there's a little more money available, or whatever all those things are. You're still kind of around the college game. What have you observed? And I mean, that stuff has happened really fast, I think, in the past few years, and we still don't exactly know. I think it's going to be a while, maybe another 5-10 years, before it's really clear what does all of this really mean for college athletics, and whether it's is it a good thing, a bad thing, what's good, what's bad. But I guess, what have you observed around the types of decisions that athletes need to make now, and how they can try to find some helpful guidance, the same way there were different things, of course, when you were looking at what are my different options here, right? There were different people that you had to rely on to give you some information, because it's like there's certain things that might seem like not your first choice, but that might have a little more upside. Like, what's that looking like?
Well, let's just say this, like, okay, this all started because of my friend Ed O'Bannon. He was the one that started this, whatever it was, 10 years ago. He was, they had an NCAA basketball game. He was on it. He was in it. And he was like, he saw one of his friend's kids playing it, and he was like, that's me. And he ain't seen no money. And so he won in state court, but I think he ended up either settling or something like that in federal court, because they ruled, he was the first ruling for that. And so, that was just the beginning of what we are now. And I can tell you this, how old I am, when I transferred, I had to sit out a year. When I transferred, if you wanted to go from, like, let's say a Pac-12, or it was a Pac-10 then, if you want to go from Pac-10 to another Pac-10 school, because I really wanted to go to Oregon, and they wanted me, but I just couldn't sit out 2 years. You had to sit out 2 years if you wanted to go from in conference. So what happened was, for me, like, I would tell, like, my son's in high school now, so any player that's going to college, like, I wouldn't take the best NIL deal, because it's cool to have the money, but you don't want to be that guy where you just go to school, leave. Now, I know the money sometimes is so outrageous for these football players that dudes are leaving dudes are leaving mid-season, like they do from UNLV. I would say make sure you get everything in writing. And so, like, no verbal, like, oh yeah, we're going to give you so-and-so amount of money, and when you get there, they ain't giving you no money, it's still love in it, but I think it's a little bit more business-like, right? Because let's face it, I mean, what did Caleb Williams make last year for SC? $3-4 million, and he made that 2 years in a row. He made, like $8-9 million before he even got to the NFL. And what I do feel about this, the NIL, and you don't have to be like the main guy getting $3-4 million. You could be the bench guy getting 75 to 100,000. What it does for us is gives us options after school. So let's just say you go to, I go to UCLA. I'm a new student at UCLA. I go there 5 years, right? Say I get a medical red shirt or whatever. I don't know. But even if I say 4 years, say my freshman year, I blow through the money, because you're in the 18, you're getting 100,000. I'm gonna just blow through it, give it to, money to moms, whatever. But even if you blow through your first year's money, you save up the next 3 years' money. Say you're getting 100K, you save up 75 of it a year. You're leaving school with 225,000 in your bank account, and you don't have to take a job that you don't want to do. And that's what a lot of athletes, former athletes, have to do. So we'll take it, like, for me, when I worked at Enterprise at one point, because I was like, I need a job, and I have money saved up, but, like, not enough to just live off that forever. So, what the NIL does is gives you an opportunity to figure out what it is you want to do instead of doing what it is you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll take some years of seeing, what's happening in college, what's happening with some of these athletes if they go pro. There's clearly, positives in shifting the power balance between coaches have always had freedom of movement, right, to go where the best offer is, and so it's not fair that an athlete wouldn't have that or would have to sit out 1 or more years to be able to transfer if they recruited to a school and then that coach that recruited them leaves, or it's just, for whatever reason, right?
Yeah. I was like, think about everybody who was at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, right?
Right.
He had kids who he recruited to Oklahoma, signed, sealed, and delivered, and then boom, SC. I'm going to SC. Or Brian Kelly, same thing. Signs with, leaves Notre Dame and goes to LSU. So like the players should be able to do that the same as coaches, because I feel like coaches are making, nowadays they're making $10, $12 million. The low ball is probably 5. So like it's so much money out there from colleges that, like you said, eventually is going to be a situation where they're going to try to govern it. But right now, like I said, for the next couple of years, it's going to be the wild, wild west until they bring it in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're a great college athlete and you're part of a program that's making money for your school, you deserve to realize some financial gain from what you're putting into it, because that might be your opportunity. You may not pursue it beyond that, but it also, I think what we'll kind of learn a little bit is either, is it Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, or it's like, mo money, mo problems, of like, now that you have more autonomy and more choice, you also have the responsibility to make the right decisions for yourself. Because in the old days, when, like sometimes 18, 19-year-olds don't necessarily know what's best, and when they were in a program, they would have to stick with it and they might learn more and end up coming out better out. Now they have the ability to go somewhere else, or, if they want to. But ultimately, as you mentioned, there's student athletes who have transferred 3-4 times. Is that best for you in the long, like, did you develop, or at the end of that, did you feel like you were able to make the choice you want to make, but at the end you didn't really come out with the skill set you might have if you stuck in one place and you were part of a program and you had more continuity?
No, I don't agree with like kids just transferring because they're not starting. Like now it's getting to the point where I thought if they're a high recruit and they're not starting, or they're not gonna, they might, not play as much as what they think they was going to play, they're leaving, which is stupid to me. I think that I always say, well, the great Frederick Douglass said, without struggle, there's no progress. And sometimes you need adversity to understand the blessing that you have of being a student athlete, even making it to the pros. Like, I think if you notice, the best quarterbacks now are guys who went to different schools, like they didn't just, obviously there's some that didn't, but like, let's just say right now, you take out Beck from Georgia, he had to sit though, a couple years. Cam Ward from Miami, was at Washington State. Even the last year's group with Caleb Williams and the Heisman Trophy winner of
It was Daniels.
Yeah. Jaden Daniels. There we go.
Yeah.
Who transferred. So to me, I just think that, like, I don't necessarily agree with guys transferring. I think there should be a limit, like to maybe 2 transfers, in a span. And if you do transfer a third time, then you have to sit out a year, Like, but I see, like you said, I see guys that basically go to 4 schools in 4 years just because they're looking for the next NIL deal. Like, that's not what the NIL was for. It was for students that are grinding, and like they have their name, image, and likeness for this school. For example, the perfect person, like a Reggie Bush type, what he did at SC, what he became, one of the, best college players ever. that is for what the NIL was for, Tim Tebow or whoever, not just the guy that's a mercenary that comes into a school, gets his money, and then transfers and goes to the next school with more money if they have $1 more. Like I don't think that's what the NIL was actually for.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree, but it's all, it's kind of part of that. Yes, you have this ability to do this, but what's best? Because I think there's plenty of, and we'll see more as it goes on, where there's clear examples where, this athlete didn't develop and didn't become what we thought they would because they kept moving around. Or, I think one example that probably, based on the individuals involved, maybe, but a lot of times you wouldn't see it happen too much today. And it was only 5, 6, 7 years ago at Alabama when Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa were right there. And they each lost the job to each other. Right? I mean, it went back and forth, but I'm sure that made both of them better because they were competing. They were, and nowadays, I wouldn't think of an example where the first time the starter lost his job, he wouldn't immediately transfer the next season. And you can go to some place where there's not really competition for that job, but does it make you as good as you can be? So there's a part of it does just creates more of that responsibility on the athletes to embrace the competition, embrace hard coaching, and it's not abusive coaching, but a coach who's going to push you and really challenge you to become your best self, which doesn't always sound like fun, right? It doesn't always make it easy for you, but to say, look, if I really want to become as good as I can, or if I want to play on the best possible team that I can, that means there's going to be a lot of guys who are just as good as me or better. If I'm by far the best guy, then the team's probably not going to be that good, right? So it's something for those athletes to think about, for their parents, for their coaches as they move up those levels, to really talk to them about, I think, to say, look, the very best of the best embrace that challenge, and they want to compete against the best, and that's what that looks like. But I'm wondering, another thing that I've heard about, but you've had firsthand experience playing overseas, especially probably specific to Europe. There's been discussion of, definitely in recent years, right, in the NBA, about, okay, why are these European players becoming so dominant and what's happening? And, one of the things I've heard about it is that, the balance between how much time they practice versus play games is totally different, right?
Oh,
in the US, it's AAU, you play, just play games all weekend. There's not really a lot of practice time. In Europe, it's practice, practice, practice. And I think we see that in some other sports as well. Baseball players from Japan, like they practice way more than they do here. And so they're that much better at the fundamentals and their baseline level. If you say controlling out for talent, like their average player is that much stronger because of that practice time. And I think see that when they talk about, okay, how come all the 7-foot European guys can shoot and pass, and and that's something, again, like when we think about what coaches might want to prioritize here, and some of it's at the system level, some of the systems just aren't set up the way the schedules are, right, where there's not a lot of practice time available. But to say, like, yes, playing games and competition is important for a lot of reasons, but there's a lot of development that happens in that practice time.
Well, I could tell you this, being overseas, it's really simple, why they're better, like if you think about the top 4 or 5 players in the NBA, they're probably all Europeans and not from here. Like you said, AAU's in a way is kind of killing basketball for Americans, because like you said, I've like my AAU time, like, don't get me wrong, you would play games, but like you would also practice. You would also get time off to maybe go play football, go play baseball, go play whatever. where you go back, you actually, now you go to your high school team and go play with them. You wouldn't play with your AAU team during the season. You might go to certain little tournaments, but most of the time you're trying to win state with your city or championship or CIF championship with your high school team. And those, those old school coaches were tough, period. And so like, when I was in overseas in Europe, like, you practice twice a day, 5 days a week. And then you would play on a Saturday. And then you would have Sunday off and then practice twice a day, every day, 5 days a week. Now, their schools are just same way. Like they have basketball academies where they're practicing, 2-3 times a day. Every single day they play one game a week. That's literally it. They're not playing 4 and 5 games in a day. They're not, 3 or 4 games in a day. They're not playing 4 or 5 games in a weekend. They're not doing that. They're practicing and working, like you said, working on the fundamentals every single day. Now, the best ones, they go pro. So when I was there, I saw 2 players. I saw the kid, Rudy Fernandez. He's Spain. He played in the NBA. He was about 18 playing in Spain. Spain is, if anybody don't know, like Spain is the number 2 league in the world behind the NBA. The most of the guys who play in Spain, a lot of them have been drafted or, have been in the NBA, that kind of thing. When I was there, I played against Marc Gasol right before he went to the NBA, right before he got drafted by the Lakers and then traded to Memphis. But it was Rudy, like I said, Rudy Fernandez, and the point guard. He got drafted before Steph Curry. He was from
Ricky Rubio.
Ricky Rubio, yeah. He was 16 starting in Spain because he was on my friend's team, Jerome Moisio. And I saw him. I was like, this kid is nice. He was 6'5". He can handle. He can really, really pass. Shooting was okay, but he could run a team. And so, like, that's what happens. Like, the best of the best at a young age, they go to that. And what these teams do, they sign their great young players to 5, 6, 7-year deals.
Yeah.
And so, like, they stay within the team and within the system. So they practice them with us every day. I was in Holland. There was 2 kids. I was with the rookie of the year twice, both my first year and my second year, to where, like, the kids, like, they didn't play as much, but they did play. And they were young, but they were playing with grown men. And like I said, practicing every day with us. And like I said, that's how their system is, their system is that. Like, they don't, AAU is great, and I'm not knocking AAU, but like I said, the fundamentals, like, parents are kind of living through their kids. And so they think that, like, oh, my kid's going pro, give him, a half a season in college and he's going number 1. And they don't listen, and, like, it's entitlement. And so all the teams, all the kids, the best kids just gang up on one team and try to win a tournament. They ain't never practiced. They ain't, they barely do plays. They just kind of one-on-one. You go one-on-one, he go one-on-one. Where in Europe, they move the ball. And you're right. The big man learn. Like, every big man is, look, Joker's the best player in the world. But all the big men in Europe are like that. All the big men in Europe can shoot. They can play in the post. They know how to use elbows and angles, and they know how to, they know how to draw fouls. They know how to flop. Like, all these things I had to learn myself. My first year, I might have charged about 3 times a game because they knew how to get in front of me. Right in front of the ref, charge. Even if it was a flop. And so I just know that, like, the academies and things like that, and, playing with grown men at a young age, that's how they're so much better. That's how, Luka Doncic could come in, at 20 years old and dominate the NBA because he was in Europe doing it already at 18 because he was playing against grown men at like 13, 14. Same with Joker, same with, a lot of guys who come in to the NBA and now that, Giannis, I mean, don't get me wrong, it took some of these, Joker and Giannis some years, but look at them now. If you want to count the top 5 in the NBA, it's probably, Joker 1, Luka 2, Giannis 3, maybe Embiid 4,
Yeah, I mean, the best, like, the things that you notice are the the highlight plays, right? But the best players are always the best at the basics, at the fundamentals. They get that by those years of practice. And one of the things that I think might be promising in this regard, when I've talked to people who are helping high school athletes navigate the recruiting space, for example, nowadays with the internet, with social media, with video, right, you can make yourself discovered wherever you are. So it doesn't only happen at showcases or an AAU tournament. Or so if you really want to focus on being the best you can, you may have more options to go about that than feeling like, this is the only way to do it. And because you see it at every level of every sport. I mean, look at it, that one of the big conversation topics right now is we're recording this right after week 4 of the NFL season. And the big conversation is how terrible the games were all of September. And why is that? It's because nobody plays their starters in the preseason. They barely practice anymore. They actually don't practice, at least at full contact. And of course, that's done for safety issues in that sport primarily, but it shows on the field. Like when you don't practice, you're not ready to play. And it just, comes across sloppy. And these are guys who are professionals, who are the best at what they do. And yet, if you're not sharp, you're not sharp. And most of us are not at that level. So if you're not putting in that work and that practice time, and that's a sport that only plays once a week, and you have that time. And again, the thing that happens in Europe, right, I think I'm not an expert in European soccer, but my understanding is they pretty much same thing. They play on the weekend, they train all week. And those are the elite players in the world at the world's most popular sport. They're spending most of their time training. And then the game is the reward for the practice. That's how we used to think about it in football, is like, that's the reward for the hard work you put in at the end of the week. Not, nobody enjoyed that practice, but we knew what it was for. But it wasn't, like I think a lot of athletes over the years, as the sports systems in this country have changed to really prioritize game number one over practice, athletes have picked up on that. And now it's like they're not really interested in that practice time because they're only interested in the game, and maybe taking the wrong lessons. I mean, whenever somebody talks about the greats, right, Jordan, Kobe, what do they talk about? How hard they practice, all the time they spent in the gym by themselves. Right? It's not about, oh, well, they used to play the most games, in this tournament or that tournament. It's all that practice time, and that's how they become the best they can. And some of it at the program level, I would guess that there's a lot of coaches out there, or people in positions of coaches, that aren't necessarily professional coaches, but they're a parent, or they're coaching youth, or coaching whatever. And they maybe haven't thought as deeply about this, to think, what are the things that are maybe the easy thing or the fun things, but what are the things that are really going to help these kids improve and develop if they love the sport, or if they just want to see how good they can be, right? Yeah. Do we have to push a little harder on focusing in on that practice time and making the most of it? But I think a lot of these examples of looking at, even though most people aren't going to become professionals, they're not going to be in the NBA, they're not going to be 3-time MVP like Jokic, right? It's like, but how did he get to where he got? When you look at him, and when he was drafted, everybody's like, oh, this guy doesn't look like he's going to be a superstar. He didn't just roll out of bed like that. He worked on it.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I think, like I said, Europe is just different when it comes to that. Like I said, like you're practicing, 2 times a day minimum. Sometimes, like you might you might go to the weight room or something in the morning for a practice, but like it's still a practice, So for me, I took everything very seriously, So when I go to the weight room, I was really lifting. I'll lift the extra days, because I didn't want to be injured. A lot of football players now, it's more prevalent than now ever, I think, that you see all these injuries from athletes, football players especially, because like you said, like they're not putting pads on in practice and they're not playing in preseason games. And like iron kind of sharpens iron, you know, like you cannot be like, we're not going to do anything and then all of a sudden go full speed. That usually, you know, especially for like, you know, wide receivers, running backs, all these people, hamstring pulls. If you notice, I don't know how many people are out, you know, injured this year because of this or that, you know, because like like I said, they're not sharpening, you know. Like when I was in Europe, I don't, you know, besides the surgery, I never got injured, you know. I never got hurt. I didn't really miss because, you know, I was practicing every day, you know, hard and I was, you know, in good shape and I was, you know, like I was working out and my joints and my bones were solid. And so like that's the difference. You know, that's why you see so many people that can't even make it through a whole season in the NBA no more because I think their bodies are, you know, the game is more about speed than it is about strength. And, you know, now, like I said, like dudes are, it's different. You know, obviously I know I'm not trying to be the old guy. Get in my day, I'm not trying to be like that because the game is just different. But the injuries have, you know, went through the roof, you know, and not just the regular superstars, you know, like regular players, superstars too. I mean, you know, Magic played 81 games like 7, 8 times, you know, in 11 years. Mike played, you know, 10 times or whatever it was, 11 times. Like, uh, who goes 81 games now? You know what I'm saying? And none of the superstars do. None. Zero.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Tatum and Brown from the Boston Celtics probably go the most. But it just, like I said, I think it's, you know, it's a different time period to where, you know, it's such a money grab business. And I want to go a little bit back to what you're talking about, the AAU thing. Now, like you said, like how everybody can be like seen or known from anywhere, right? Like when I was coming up in AAU, there was no internet and there was no stuff like that. So like wherever you did as a player, you had to earn your name, you know? Whatever name you have, you was top 10 in the country, top 5 in the country, top whatever. Like you had to go to, you know, this place and this place and this place to show your game and people had to see you. There was no like, you know, internet where a guy has 5 dunks, you put them on YouTube and like this guy, he might have had 16 points, but they make him seem like he's, you know, Michael Jordan because he had 5 dunks. And so I just think now it's just really different. You know, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's such more money grab. That's why you see, you know, dads coaching their sons because they want that, you know, that Nike sponsorship or Adidas or whatever, AU money. It's this, you know, big money grab.
Yeah. What are some of the things in your opinion coaches should do and they should try to have a role in as far as like helping their young athletes determine their goals, where they might want to go with their sport? You know, if we're talking about they could, you know, let's say high school level or maybe heading into high school, athletes who have ambition around it, right? Who think they want to push it as far as they can, but need a trusted source of guidance to help them with that because there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of people out there who either just don't know and maybe can't provide the best insight. There's people who have their own motives, right? And we want to think that hopefully our coaches and our, you know, high schools and all can trust it on that. And I talk about that to a lot of people here, like what responsibility is there? And there's varied opinions. Some people think high school coaches shouldn't get too involved in that stuff because it's just not their place. Other people would say they really should try to because there might not be anybody else in that student athlete's life who knows anything about the recruiting process or what options are out there. And that might mean that they never achieve their potential because nobody gives them those insights or tells them the importance of keeping their grades up or, you know, making those visits or whatever the case may be.
Well, I would just say, as you know, if you're a coach, tell the kids the truth. You know, like no matter what it is, you know, if kids need to work hard, you got to tell them, like, look, man, you lazy. And even if he leaves your program, then he leaves your program, you know? I think that like a lot of coaches and college coaches are victim of this too, where they want to cater to the kids and they cater to the big name kids. So like, oh my God, this kid is like top 5 in the country, so I got to cater to them. Like, hey, you can go out there, do whatever you want. You don't have to work. And then that goes to the college. And like, look, the college, like, look, let's just win. And then I know you're going to go pro. Like, I would just say like this, just be honest with the kids. And like you said, like my dad with me, if he didn't know something about college and about recruiting, he would talk to somebody who did.
Mm-hmm.
That was his thing. Like he would talk, he knew, my dad made great connections, because of his job at the time and because of me. So he found people like when I was in my recruiting process, it was hard. It was a lot of schools that were coming to recruit me out of high school. I had about 200, 250 scholarship offers, but I didn't, I knew myself, right? And my dad he knew me too. So he knew that I probably wouldn't be going to nowhere far and then nowhere cold. So I knocked out, you know what I'm saying, a lot of schools. I knocked out, 150 schools. So, I think for me, it's like get the information, the right information for the kids and give them your honest opinion. Now, your opinion can be wrong. They can turn into whatever they want to turn into. But you have to be honest, what you think. Like, look, like I can tell you, or I can tell my son, like T, like I like your game. You're a good player. I think that, so I'm just throwing out UCLA is a school for you because they run a good offense. And, you talk to the coach, they run a good offense. They're going to push you academically as well. And, I think you have your best chance to succeed. Now, a lot of these kids, they just go into the biggest bag. Like, if UCLA offers 100,000, Michigan offers, 200,000. I'm going to Michigan because they're offering 200,000. Like, no, pick you, like give the kid the honest assessment if you're a coach, because coaches are teachers. You're like a teacher. You're, what I'm saying, like you're molding a kid to, like for his future. And you have to be honest with them. Like you don't have to hurt their feelings or be brutally harsh, but you have to be honest, and, that's what I would want my son. Like a coach, I don't need my coach just to kiss my son's ass or kiss my ass, excuse my language, but I would want them to be honest. Like, look, he needs to work on shooting, dribbling, whatever, just tell the kids the truth. And then I think that parents will respect you more rather than just blowing smoke up their butt.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to be successful, they need to have the truth, right? And be able to determine what level, what types of programs, what do I need to do to get where I'm going, and who in my life can tell me that. And if I can't trust my coach to give me some of that information, who else is there? And
your coach to find somebody
it can make, right? I've seen the difference it can make if you take the same program, the same school, and replace one coach with another one, and one who really engages in that process. All of a sudden, they're sending guys to all these schools that never happened in the past. Well, if it's a public school, right? I mean, there's outliers, but in general, the talent pool didn't change. So what changed? It changed was, there was just more guidance there and better engagement with schools, better, leadership around. Yeah, these are the things you need to do. And there's a lot of the things that are outside of what happens on this field or on this court. And it really matters. It might not seem like it matters to you, but it does, because you can't get admitted to a school if you don't meet the requirements. Yeah. It doesn't matter how bad the coach wants you, right? There's things you need to do, and you need to get somebody to tell you that before it's too late. So it's really important. So Travis, before we wrap up, I wanted to give you a chance to, tell our listeners a bit about the shows that you host, what they might hear there. The floor is yours on that.
Okay. Well, I would say I host a couple shows. It's a show called Believe in UCLA. Me and my friend TJ Cummins, He's son of Earl Cummings, who played in the NBA 15 years. Yeah, like 15 years, yeah. TJ played, played in the NBA, played overseas, played at UCLA. We talk about UC right now. He don't do the football, but he do the basketball with me. Right now, I'm talking about the football and things like that. But pretty soon basketball's coming, so he'll be doing that with me. My number one show, I have also, I'm not sure he said, she said, but it's acquired taste. But my number one show is An Athlete's Journey that is on, Spotify, all those, and as well as YouTube. Pretty much, on The Athlete's Journey, I've interviewed NBA players, former NBA players, overseas players, tennis, baseball, football, basketball, hockey. No, hockey's the only one I haven't done. Gymnast, bodybuilding. I've done, like in this, pretty much the show is about, like former and current athletes talking about their journeys. And for me, the main thing is like what happens after.
Yeah.
I struggled with it. I know a lot of my friends who struggled with it. So I just want, people to hear their, different stories of how they struggled and how they persevered to get to where they are now. And just to let people know they can learn from my mistakes and their mistakes, and become, better than I ever was or better than what they ever were.
Yeah, well, if you like this show, you probably like that. Conversations, with athletes from all different sports and thinking about how it applies to you, what you might want to, impart that wisdom to the young athletes in your life. So we'll put the links to those below where you can find them, check them out. If you haven't already, please do also subscribe to Sideline Sessions. We'll have the rest of our season coming out here each week for season 3 of the show, and a lot of great conversations from all across the sports landscape. Or you can also visit bpodcast.network if you want to learn about our other shows focused on education. So thanks for listening, and thank you again, Travis, for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.